In all of anime and manga, there always has to be that one character that stands beside the protagonist from the start to the very end, or on other occasions, sadly, they don't even make it to the end. But in most cases, if they don't find a happy ending to their life, they usually receive great writing and give us a very enjoyable experience to balance it out. I really love to see these kinds of characters in any medium as they give us a different perspective than the protagonist is one. A deuteragonist is kind of like a side character but receives the most screen time in a story excluding the protagonist or the antagonist. They're basically the main character but actually not the main character. As an example, I would say Killua, who has been by Gon's side from the very start of the story to the end. This formula gives us a great balance of characters who we will be with for a long time in the story. Today I'll be talking about how deuteragonists are needed in a story and how well they should be incorporated as a general side to the main character, a foil to their ideals, or even how well they're given their own important story equal to the main protagonist's one. Before we get into the video though, subscribe if you haven't, hit the like button, turn on bell notifications, and follow my Twitter down below. So without further ado, let's get into the video.
Fighting God,
Usually when I get into a series, I never take the main character for being too interesting or enjoyable at the start, except if the story is entirely about them, like Berserk or even Vagabond. For the stories with a big cast, I go looking for that one character that is like the protagonist and gets focused on a lot, giving us their own take on the setting they're in, or even showing us their own troubles in the plot as well. A good deuteragonist has to be as enjoyable or even more enjoyable than the main character, while also being able to fill the role in for the protagonist whenever they're not around, as they're basically the second most important character of the story. A quick example as to where the deuteragonist is actually pretty much more interesting and able to fill in the role better than the protagonist is Bruno Bucciarati. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 Golden Wind or Vento Oreo, Bruno is obviously seen as a more compelling character than Giorno ever was. I at least see this personally, and I'm sure others do. He's given a fitting backstory for his character that signifies his ideals for the present story well, and also given a compelling journey. As a deuteragonist, Bruno has the same goal as the protagonist, which is to end the drug trade and not let anyone be a victim to the drugs like his father was. But guess which storyline was more compelling? Yes, Bruno's one was, easily. In the story, he's appointed some fairly good character traits like loyalty, as he's shown to put his gang members' life before his. Even Trish's life, even though she wasn't close to him at all. Bruno had more stakes to his character as he wasn't the protagonist as well. Another thing that makes deuteragonists more interesting, they literally don't have plot armor all too much, in a majority of stories at least. I love the idea being executed in this sort of way, but right now let's dive into a more detailed way of explaining how these next characters are very good deuteragonists for their respective series. The reasons I'll explain their greatness would be their impact or importance to the actual protagonist, how good of a foil or opposing threat they are to them, and finally, how well their own entire story is executed in the plot other than the protagonist's one. As I said at the start of the video, Killua Zoldyck is a perfect example of a deuteragonist in the medium of anime and manga. He's a very good one at that as well. The section I'm going to be talking about him is how important the deuteragonist is to the protagonist, keeping them in check as well as being the one person who will stand side by side with them to whenever the story decides to stop that at. When we're introduced to Killua and his first meeting with Gon, we're met with a pretty typical friendship starting in shonen. They're the same age, they're both able to keep up with each other in the hunter exams. Perfect friendship right there, nothing special. But as the series progresses on, we're met with bits and pieces of Killua's own view on what this so-called typical friendship means to him. As that second protagonist, it fits for him to acquire his own fleshed out story with compelling characterization that really makes us care for that second character that we're gonna be with for the most time in the story. Gon already has a pretty obvious character that everyone knows what he's about and what he wants to do, but for Killua he's mysterious and has a bloody background that pushes him to do those brutal acts that he does in the present plot. With Killua in the story like this, it gives us a whole new extra story we'll be able to follow as he's pretty much the main character as well. It gives us someone other than Gon whose character is already crystal clear and makes us stay interested in the whole story's direction as we keep going. Look, I don't hate Gon. I think he's a pretty solid character who gets misunderstood most of the time, but having Killua there as the second main character keeps the story fresh and interesting, and his importance to Gon is clearly something that adds to both of their characters. The impact that he has on the protagonist of Hunter x Hunter is nothing really too big, whereas the impact that Gon has on Killua is really big. The friendship that was gained from that fateful meeting would be one that Killua will always cherish, as it literally changed him. As a deuteragonist who will stay side by side with the protagonist at every highs and lows, Killua was able to develop from a cold-grown killer to a caring and empathetic brother. The journey that he shares with Gon, from the Hunter exams where he met his first friend, to the Zoldyck arc where he finds his resolve of wanting to be something other than what his parents planned for him to be, to the eventual Chimera Ant arc where he finally takes off the Forsaken Needle that was drilled into his head and ends his unwanted fear, to the final departure where he finds a purpose in life, which is to protect his sister from his family. Killua's journey was done in such a compelling way that it really made us care for his character in the end. He gives us a fresh new perspective in the story of Hunter x Hunter, and his self-discovery completion of course made us appreciate his role as the Deuteragonist. So let's talk about another example of a Deuteragonist that really makes the story interesting as well, the foil kind. One that would be able to oppose the protagonist at any means while also being able to stay side by side with them. Some examples would be of course Sasuke from Naruto, and the most iconic one, Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. But a recent favorite of mine goes by the name of Kumagawa Misogi from the manga Medaka box. The manga had a pretty average start, nothing too exciting happened, but I'd say it was enjoyable at some parts, but generally it was slow. No characters really shined throughout the early story, and it would stay like this for a while until we are met with Kumagawa. The manga finally gave meaning to its story with this introduction, and the plot quickly went uphill in a really good way. Seeing this kind of Deuteragonist impact upon the story really gives us signs of them having a great role. I'll give some of my favorite traits that he has and what really makes his role compelling as that kind of Deuteragonist. Kumagawa was originally an antagonist, just like Vegeta. He's still unpredictable and untrustable, but we're able to see his character progress across the story with the protagonist in a way that really makes him important as a foil and an opposite to them. Kumagawa is what they say a minus. He suffers from losing continuously and the desperation of wanting to win against the main characters even once. He low-key says this in the manga, and I can even read it. Quote, "I want to beat the people who work hard when I can't work hard. I want to beat the victorious people when I can't win. I want to beat the happy people when I'm miserable. Even if I'm hated, even if I'm despised, even if I'm useless, I want to prove that I'm better than the main characters." End quote. The stuff that he says here really represents his character as a whole. He's not the main character, and he can never be in a story like this. He'll try to be one, he'll try to win and keep on getting closer to winning, because he'll also stand up to the role that he has been sorted into. Kumagawa is a character that I feel like everyone should check out. I know Medaka box is pretty underrated, so I'll give it my recommendation because I can see Kumagawa as someone you'll sympathize with a lot and maybe relate with as well. He's charismatic and an enjoyable, well-written Deuteragonist that shows the struggles of people who aren't main characters, giving us amazing one-liners and quotes that'll sit in our heads for a long time. He's a great opposite to the protagonist, who is seen as perfection to everyone else. A perfect contrast for the story, making Kumagawa's inclusion in the plot incredibly needed. The last person I'm using as an example for a greatly written Deuteragonist would be my favorite of the bunch, Gyro Zeppeli from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 Steel Baron. This section may be very similar to Killua's one, but I included his character anyway because he's an amazing example for the video. I'm going to talk about how Gyro's inclusion in the story really balanced out well with the protagonist, with his story and growth shining all the way, while also not taking the spotlight away from Johnny. Steel Run is a story that strongly relies on the many different characters that it has, with the two obvious ones that shine throughout the journey, Johnny and Gyro, being the best ones. I really like how Araki dealt with the growth of the two of them. He starts off developing and diving into Gyro first, as this story's Deuteragonist was actually the first important character to appear. Some bits of his past is shown first as well, making us already connected to his motives for the plot and giving us some time to invest into his character already. But as a deuteragonist, he still has the role just under the protagonist, so whenever Johnny takes a stand on his own at some key parts of the story, Gyro would take up a slight mental role, teaching the protagonist lessons by his side whenever he isn't playing the best friend role. I really love the switch up of roles with Gyro as it gives him extra traits for his characterization. When Gyro is playing the best friend deuteragonist, he's funny, charismatic, and sympathetic. When playing the mental one, he's strict, serious, wise, and a skilled teacher for Johnny. This diversity of character traits makes Gyro such an interesting character that everyone would get invested in easily. The combination of all of these traits really makes the best example of the perfect deuteragonist for me. Experiencing his time as a side to Johnny and watching him to also grow himself was just too amazing. I loved it. If you haven't gotten up to Steel Ball Run yet on your JoJo read through, get ready for undoubtedly one of the best characters in anime and manga. Also, don't skip parts. So that's where I'm gonna end it off for today. Hopefully you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure to put some more video ideas in the comments below. But like always, subscribe if you haven't, hit the like button, turn on bell notifications, and follow my Twitter down below. It's been Endless Requiem, peace.